Welcome to Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 143, otherwise known as Season 8, Episode 3. I'm your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing fine. Not much new to report on, but gotta say, it's only February. Been a pretty good year for horror.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But first, also joining us is your other host, John Correia. How you doing, Correia? We almost started the episode without you.
I was about to say, I know I've been reading a book about conspiracies, but I felt one brewing here just now.
The big release right now is The Monkey.
The Monkey.
Have we all seen The Monkey?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What'd you guys think?
Oh man, I love The Monkey. It's just an interesting blend too, because it's an Osgood Perkins movie just coming off of the success and rep from Longlegs, and it's based off a Stephen King short story, and it's from Neon, and yeah, it's a load of fun because it's basically about these two brothers who get this like kind of creepy toy monkey that plays the drums, and every time it plays the drums, somebody dies horribly, usually somebody connected to them, which makes for some very good set pieces involving very elaborate and gory deaths that are also hilarious.
It's very Final Destination in the deaths and they just get crazier and crazier as you go. But my thing was, it was not the movie I expected to be. Knowing it's a Stephen King adaptation, now it is the loosest of Stephen King I mean, it's one step above The Lawnmower Man as far as loose King because there is a monkey that when you crank it, someone dies, and that's about where the similarities end. But this one, it's even a different kind of monkey. The monkey in the King one, I think, is a cymbal playing monkey, and this one plays like a snare drum. Yeah.
A funny story about that. Apparently, they couldn't use the cymbal playing monkey because Disney put a copyright on cymbal playing monkeys because there was one in Toy Story. That's why they had to change that.
That sounds about right.
No, I'm dead serious.
That's ridiculous because cymbal playing monkeys were out way before. Anyway, but the thing is, I was expecting it to be more of a straight horror movie, so it was not what I expected. But it is way more of a comedy than a horror movie. Like it is hysterical, this movie, and like Jacob's saying, even the deaths, you're cracking up the whole time because they're so like the very first scene has this death where it's set in motion by a rat on a shelf, and it's like a freaking Rube Goldberg machine that goes down. Oh my God. It's hysterical though. So much fun.
Yeah. It's all the deaths were very Looney Tunes meets Final Destination.
And they just kept getting more and more so, like the kid in the backseat of the car.
So good. I always it's one of those movies where I left and I'm like, the confidence that the movie has, because sometimes there's movies where it's like, we're going to do something very weird with the tone, with the characters' motivations, with everything, and we're going to play it as straight as possible, and the confidence that's behind it is just all over the pages. Like it's hilarious, but also is like a deep meditation on grief. There's a few characters in it that have motivations that once the motivation is revealed, it's like, that's the stupidest motivation I've ever heard, but it makes sense because of just like the amount of grief that is, because it is a funny movie, but the meditation on death and death of loved ones is profoundly deep. So, which is such an interesting mix because it's in between these, like we said, Looney Tunes meets Final Destination deaths, and it all works. And I think Theo James playing the two brothers is incredible.
Oh yeah.
Especially since, if he comes off of like White Lotus and The Gentleman, where he's, he really shines as that attractive dude, and here he's just weird, like in every sense, and senses that you don't even know.
Yeah, both characters are losers in their own ways, so he's like really playing up being just kind of like an unattractive person.
Yeah. And they're so different too. Like I mean, we haven't had a portrayal of twins like this since The Dark Half.
Yeah.
I mean, it was actually very Dark Half-esque, and also in the way that it was shot towards the end. But Correia, you'll love this. I had the worst. They didn't screen it for press, so I had to actually go to a paid screening, and I had the worst audience ever.
Why would I love that?
No, I'm just saying you'll appreciate, not love.
Because it's the first time that you had a bad audience and I had a good audience.
Maybe if you had a good audience, yeah. There were not audience. One, but two people texting for the entire movie. Jesus. One of them right in front of me, and the one right in front of me also. Every time the monkey would get the key spun to kill someone, she would start playing a drum in front of me, you know, like playing air drums. I'm like, are you guys really? Anyway, it made me appreciate press screenings even more. But because the monkey is usually, this is the kind of movie that you think would be more fun with an audience, but my audience sucked.
See, we went and saw it at an AMC, but Osgood Perkins was doing a Q&A tour around the AMCs in LA that opening weekend. And so we went to one of the screenings where he did a Q&A after. And he was joined with Tatiana Maslany, who is incredible in this movie. I mean, no one's going to doubt that Tatiana Maslany wasn't going to fucking slay it in this movie because she is a god. If you've ever seen Orphan Black.
Yeah, I thought she was great in She-Hulk.
Oh, she was fantastic in She-Hulk, but Orphan Black, she plays like 17 different characters.
Oh, yeah.
All done well. I always forget what her actual accent is because she has like a bajillion accents in that show. But and that's the thing too. And I was really stoked because we're big fans of her, and that she joined with the Q&A as well, because her and her character really tie that movie together. Like that opening scene is so over the top and like kind of ridiculous, and then it's mostly flashback to when the twins are kids and with the mom, and Tatiana Maslany and her character set the tone so well of like what's happening here, because she's weird, she's funny, she's also very deep in what she's saying, but also has this like does weird things with her face that like just work really well. And I think without her, I don't think the movie would have worked, because she sets the tone perfectly, and it's because of her everything sets off. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like she should be getting awards, but it's horror, so, and it's early in the year, so we'll see. But the monkey, I loved the monkey. It was great. Love the promo they're doing of just like the giant monkeys in theaters around here.
Oh yeah,
and I did not get the popcorn bucket. That seemed like a step too
That's
far.
what I was about to ask. Did you get one of those popcorn buckets? It's a pretty cool popcorn bucket.
It's a really cool popcorn bucket, but I don't have the space.
That's what made me think you'd get it. You're a popcorn bucket fanatic.
I only have like 3 or 4. I just have the alien one, the sarcophagus, and like Mad
Didn't you
Max.
get the Ghostbusters one?
I got one of the Ghostbusters ones, but it's Slimer. He's holding all my
Yeah, I got the Ghost Trap one.
Oh, you got the Ghost Trap one? That's dope.
Yeah. Though speaking of audiences, I was lucky enough to go to the Beyond Fest pre-screening last month, and that was a great crowd for it. And actually related to that, you can actually see me in the commercial for the monkey, or you know, like on Instagram and stuff, where they do those audience reactions. Like you can see me with like a shocked expression on the Instagram post, because you know they recorded the audience while we were watching the movie.
Is this going to be another fucking Nickelodeon?
I was going to say, does it say as seen in Nickelodeon's, as seen on Nickelodeon?
No, dude, you can go to the Neon page and look at like the audience reactions video. It's right there. I can even text it to you.
I feel like I'm like Charlie Day and fucking It's Always Sunny with the whiteboard and
Pepe Sylvia.
No, Jacob says he was in the video game Nickelodeon show, but I haven't seen it. I've watched all the episodes. I watched the April 24th, 1996 episode, and he wasn't in that one. No.
I think we just have the wrong show title. I think that it's probably something else that Jacob's misremembering the title on.
I might have an answer on that, actually. Like I was talking with my folks the other day, and it was, you know, we were visiting around Christmas, so it might have just been like a promotional thing they were doing for tours, and like a promotion for, I think it was Sonic and Knuckles. So I may not have been televised. It may have just been a thing they were doing for the holidays as a promo thing.
It was a goose chase.
How can I ever trust you again?
And now let's bring in our guests for the episode. We're real excited about this one. We have got the editors of Companion, which is one of our favorites of the year, Brett Bachman and Josh Ethier. How you guys doing?
Hey, doing good.
Doing well. Here.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. I always like to start off with kind of the origin story. How'd you guys get started doing what you're doing? And have you always wanted to work in horror? Let's start with you, Brett.
Horror was a bit of I suppose, a recent discovery for me. I had grown up being involved with learning the essence of filmmaking on my family's mini DV camera. Got into college, got really involved with the sketch comedy community there. And really, I was volunteering at our college TV station doing anything film or TV related. Upon graduating, I knew I wanted to be serious about this and figured I would have to find my way to New York or to Los Angeles. Got into the American Film Institute, spent a great 2.5 years there. And it was around this time that I had come up on a few horror comedies, mostly like Sam Raimi, but like I had avoided almost all horror growing up. I hated the sensation of being frightened. And I had been reading a lot about his new movie, Drag Me to Hell. And we have a service at the school where you can check out DVDs, and I grabbed it. I took it home. I had a great time with it, but the ending of that film completely blew my socks off. Like I had no idea it was coming. I remember feeling astonished and really creeped out, and I couldn't shake this feeling for like 3 days. I couldn't shake the sense of nihilism and dread, and I realized like there's something to this. This is like a really powerful emotion that I've been kind of neglecting, and the act of being scared and being tense and how to build that. I realized there was an entire toolkit of things that I could do as a storyteller that I've never really engaged with before, and a sensation that there's something to this. This is a core part of being human that I've been neglecting for such a long time. That was kind of the genesis for me.
Oh, cool. How about you, Josh?
When I was in high school, I was obsessed with like heavy metal and all this other stuff. So I would just sit in my room and I would play guitar and I would record music. And then when I was in freshman year of high school, I actually met Joe Begas, who's still a friend of mine, and we still make films together. And Joe loved using a camera and hated sitting in front of a computer. And because I had a background in music and was sort of experimenting with sound and all this stuff, I was kind of aware of like watching something just like on repeat for, a period of time. So I started editing his stuff and just realized I fell in love with it. And this is when I was like 15 years old. So I used to just spend like all of my lunches in high school, like on, IMDb, like reading all the trivia for whatever movies I was watching and trying to watch as much as I could. And obviously we would go to horror conventions. We were obsessed with horror movies. My entire left arm is just horror tattoos. It's like, even before we were making movies, we were obsessed with it and we wanted to be a part of it. And that's actually really funny. We moved to LA when we were 21 together, and had like a 1-bedroom apartment in the valley. And I slept on the couch. And one of the first things that we did when we got here, actually the first day we were here, we bought tickets for it when we were leaving Rhode Island, and we drove across country like 3 straight days to get here for that 70 millimeter screening of The Fly with Cronenberg and Howard Shore at the Cinerama Dome in 2008. And then we were at like a Best Buy like a week later. We had finally gotten our power on in our apartment and our internet and everything. So we're over at like a Best Buy, like looking through Blu-rays, and some guy walked up to us with a messenger bag and he was like, "Hey, do you guys like horror movies?" And it was like weird because you would assume it's like he's trying to sell us drugs or something. But it was like, "You like horror movies?" Like opened up his bag and he had like invites too, which is hilarious. Drag Me to Hell. And he was like, "You guys want to come see the new Sam Raimi horror movie?" We're like, hell yes, of course we do. So we got to go to like a test screening of that. And, it was just experiences like that. Living here in LA, we started to work with like, Adam Green and Joe Lynch. And Joe was working for Stuart Gordon, which was incredible. I was working for an editor named Ed Marks, and we were just steeped in it. We weren't making any money. We were still holding regular jobs, but we were, thankfully like a small ancillary part of the community. And then we decided, fuck it, we have to make it.
It's kind of wild that like you and I think have we started like at the exact same time.
Brett and I have always been running in parallel, and that's, when he worked on Mandy, for instance, I was a huge fan of that movie. As I mentioned, I love heavy metal, I love downers, I love slow cinema, I love all of the things that that Panos was doing on that movie, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And Brett had also worked with Adam Mortimer, who I'd worked with on his first film, Some Kind of Hate. Brett had cut Daniel Isn't Real, and so at one of Adam's house parties, I met Brett, and I was like, oh my God, I love that movie. And we just started like trading like temp scores, and every once in a while going to grab a beer, and just became buddies. And it was cool because usually you would assume that two guys that are, working in the same world and going after similar jobs, there would be some sort of animosity, and there like just isn't. He's just like one of my best friends. He's just a wonderful guy. And the chance to work with him on this was awesome. And I hope at some point it gets to happen again.
That was my next question. Are you guys, is this the first time you've worked together?
In an official capacity, yeah. I mean, we've been the horror community, especially post-production horror community, feels like it's relatively small. We've seen each other at test screenings and each other's giving notes on each other's movies for years. But yeah, first time like an official capacity on the same movie.
I'm a big proponent of, I don't believe in competition so much as encouragement. So it makes me happy that you guys, you might be going for the same jobs, but you still lift each other up, because I don't know. I'm more about support than competing. Anyway.
Yeah, man. It's difficult out there. You need each other to hold each other up.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially since sometimes it's not you. It's just like the project, and it's whatever, it is best for the project. Sometimes one voice it's the same with actors. I hear actors all the time. They're like, what's a role that you wish you had gotten? And it's like, for whatever reason, that was the person for it, and it wasn't me. And that's fine.
One of the things that took me such a long time to realize was like how contingent just your own personal schedules are in your own career. I mean, you say yes to a film and you're basically kind of locked up for, 6 to 7, 8 months sometimes, if not a little bit longer. And so our window, fortunately, if you're working, that window of availability, hopefully is kind of short. And so if stuff gets thrown my way, or if I get an invite to take a general or to read on something, Josh is the first guy I'm throwing that opportunity to if I'm booked on something. I mean, opportunities come and you're booked and you're not available. I mean, we're constantly referring each other for stuff.
Yeah. There's no reason it shouldn't go to, folks you trust. Absolutely.
And on that, how did you both get involved with Companion?
Well, going back to all the shared history we have, we both worked with the same group of producers, Boulder Light, earlier in our careers. So after Mandy, my agent had given me a phone call and said, I want you to meet these two guys, JD and Rafi. They're young, they're extremely tenacious, they are very ambitious. They will be running the studio at some point in their lives. You better get in the door with them right now. And they had this project called The Vigil, which was a haunted house film.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
Oh, thanks, sir. Steeped in Judaism and folklore. And had a wonderful experience working on this little movie. I mean, I think we're sub $1 million, but the film developed, a little bit of a cult following. We played at Toronto, played at Sitges. IFC eventually put it out. But that was my introduction to the Boulder Light world, and I've stayed close with the guys over the years. I received a text message from Rafi one evening, and he was like, we have a new project, curious if you'd be interested in looking at it. And I had heard a little bit about Companion in the press with Zach Kreger's involvement in Boulder Light. And I didn't really know Drew Hancock, the writer and director of the project, but they set up a general. I met with the man, very lovely, very smart, was clearly so passionate about this story. And the meeting went really well. And I got offered the opportunity to do the movie. We got going, knowing that there was a potential imminent strike on the horizon. And just a few weeks in the production, it became clear that they were not going to, this thing wasn't going to be sorted out. And we shut the movie down, just over halfway done shooting it. And we were able to only keep on editing for like an extra 2 or 3 weeks, and realized I had this common agreement that there really wasn't much sense in continuing to work on this half a movie. And so we got shut down. We shut down editorial, hoping that we'd come back shortly, hoping that the strike would, be over relatively soon, but took several months. And I received a phone call from Drew months later. He was like, "We're coming back. I have some ideas I want to run by you, but first and foremost, are you interested in coming back?" And I said, "Of course, I'd be there in a heartbeat. There's a major stipulation I have to tell you right now, though. If I came on board, I would have to step away from the project around like week 6 of your director's cut because my wife and I are expecting twins. And so I would need to take a paternity leave for about a month and a half. But if you would have me and this arrangement's okay with you, I have someone I would love to recommend to sub in." And they said yes. And that's how they met. Well, that's how Drew met Josh. But I mean, Josh, of course, you have your own relationship with the Borderlight guys that goes back even farther than me.
Yeah, about 12 years ago, I edited their first film, Contracted.
Oh.
So I've been friends with those guys for years, and it was funny to go from a $50,000, shot in L.A. basically mumblecore stolen horror film to years later working on a Warner Brothers studio film with them with Warner's and New Line. But thankfully when Brett recommended me, they said, "Oh yeah, no, we love Josh," and then it was just a matter of meeting Drew, who like Brett said is incredible. He's just like this incredibly funny, like very, very thoughtful dude who really, really cares about his film. But also, I think just from spending a lot of time in writers' rooms and spending a lot of time pitching and stuff, he's just so personable and funny and easy to like bounce back and forth with, which is great in the editing room. I've certainly worked with folks that are a little bit quieter, worked with some folks that are, everyone has their own sort of method, but Drew was like perfect. He loved to bounce in and out of the room. I'm going to go do some emails. You work on this. And then he'd come back in, we'd riff for an hour or so, and then he'd step out to do this, that, but he was really easy and great to work with. And thankfully too, that also meant that obviously Brett didn't need to go very far from the job because obviously he could go take care of his wife and his 2 new baby boys. But obviously we were just, basically warming a seat for him for when he came back.
That's awesome. Congratulations on the kids, by the way.
Oh, thanks guys. They just turned 1 year old last Sunday.
Nice. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
The birthdays.
yeah.
No, it's still one birthday.
Yeah, the wife treats it as a separate holiday for her though as well. So there's the public birthday party, and then there's also the my wife and I go out to celebrate her birthday, which is something separate.
Oh, it's the same birthday as the wife?
No. Just the event of like giving birth. She's like, this is now a holiday for me. Like the act of like carrying them for 9 months and going through it all. And now they're out and now we have children. This is another holiday.
Oh, no,
deserves it.
The day of freedom.
Yeah. They don't really, no one really does that. That's really awesome. It's like, yeah, no, she did all the work, like, and carrying them, and it's twins. So like, yeah, no, definitely celebrate her as well.
Oh yeah.
Birthdays.
No. We've the 3 of us were lucky enough to see Companion before it was released, so nothing was spoiled. And I've been telling people, if you see this movie, go in completely blind, because I've seen titles of reviews that spoil what to me was the most fun twist. Now, when editing, clearly the editing keeps the movie's secrets. So, how was that? Was that part of the process, knowing that these reveals were reveals?
At the time, yes. We had driven forward with, laying little hints, laying little Easter eggs here and there. And if you look at the film, it's pretty easy to pick up on, a few of these more, not necessarily subtle, but, the conversation with Kat and Iris on the couch where she's talking about her sense of self-worth and how.
I know Correia and I have both watched the movie a second time to see knowing where it's going, what you can pick up on. And you're right. There's a lot of cool stuff like that in it.
Yeah.
It's worth a second.
Oh, it just wasn't made that way.
Yeah. I mean, and initially, before an audience was like familiar with all this stuff, I mean, that first reveal of her as a robot was like a barn burner. Like that broke down the theater. In the testing process, when we're collecting data and we're having smaller friends and family screenings, like that moment in the movie for an audience that didn't really know what this thing was consistently like the favorite moment of the film. And I don't know how much we really cared about maintaining a sense of secrecy about that particular moment, because there was a few audience members that did kind of piece together some of these uncanny hints that were leading up to that. But we also, I don't know if spoil is the right word, but there was a lot of discussion about an earlier moment too, where she says, "The day I killed him." Like that used to be that was initially that was written to be the day he killed me, and throughout most of editorial, it was the day Josh killed me. We made that switch in the editing process during a friends and family discovery. So I think it's safe to say when working with Drew, it became more about, as opposed to what happens, it's how does it happen? How do the characters react to it? Does revealing some of this information earlier on allow you to focus in on other particular character specifics and hopefully build empathy for them?
During the tests, we had a lot of it all, like basically all of our focus groups. There was even one group where a guy said, if you had marketed this as what it is, I probably wouldn't have come to see it, but I really like the movie. And it was kind of like all the sort of research was sort of saying like, oh, maybe we shouldn't reveal it. But obviously I don't understand marketing in the way that the New Line people do. And obviously I think they made the right choice because the film was a moderate success. And also what was kind of fun about that was when one of the things is spoiled for you, because that's not all that the movie is, you guys have seen the film. It's about 20 minutes in that something is revealed, that is revealed in the marketing. But then there's a couple of other sort of like ricochet reveals down the line that aren't spoiled. And those are now the moments that get like a nice big pop from the audience. And so I'm glad that. And
they're not expecting it.
Yeah. Because they think they're ahead of it. Everyone goes in there, having seen the trailer or read those reviews, like you said, and thinking like, oh, I know what it is. And I agree. It does make that first 20 minutes a little bit silly if you know everything, but we never tried to shy away from it. We were just hoping that, however the film was marketed, it would find its audience. And we just tried to proceed with that as best we could. But I'm glad that some of that audience pop moved down the way to some of those other reveals. And so there is still like a bit of fun and a bit of discovery in the theater for people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Jacob and I were at the Beyond Fest screening down at the Aero Theater months ahead. And
back in November.
Yeah, back in November. And the only thing I would tell people is the worst part of Companion is the fact that I have to wait until the end of January to see it again. Because there was so much that I was like, man, because that first screening I left going like, man, Jake Quaid is going after his mom's title for the rom-com thing. And then I went and saw it a second time and I was like, no, he's not. I was so naive with that first. So like there's so much to unpack and so much to look for in it. And it was that entire audience at that Beyond Fest screening went bananas like every 5 minutes, especially the you don't know what it's like for people like me line. Even at the second screening we went to was just an AMC small crowd, and so many people lost it at that. So.
The little eyebrow raised too.
And I had actually I had to kind of chase down a screening link because my editor had asked for a review, and the link I got was good for 5 views. So I took Correia's advice, and after I watched it the first time, I went right back and watched it a second, just so I could see, what I had, and because I knew right when I got through it, I'm like, oh, this is why he wants to see it again. So it is a different movie the second time through. But I'm so glad that I didn't have, even that first 20-minute thing, that was jaw-dropping for me. I didn't see it coming at all. And that's what I'm trying to protect other people from. But at this point, like you said, the marketing is
well, if there's anyone out there who could get into it unspoiled, I say go for it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that what really hooked me when I first heard about the film was that teaser trailer where it was from the people that brought you Barbarian and the studio that brought you The Notebook. Like that teaser was brilliant, and just the ambiguity and that type of marketing, like it really got me interested, which is why it was so shocking when I finally got to watch it with Jonathan at the Beyond Fest screening and see what it was actually about. So that was the other thing too, is that just having all those secrets going into it, that even the initial one and then leading into the later ones throughout the rest of the story just made such a deeper impact.
Yeah.
Now, Okay, we talked about Companion, but another thing that Brett has worked on that is another one of our favorites of the year collectively, Hard Eyes.
Oh yeah.
What was working on Hard Eyes like?
A dream. I just must say, I love the experience of working on that film. Josh and I are close friends. This is my second time working. Josh Rubin. My wife also gets confused all the time. I have to specify Josh Rubin, Josh Ethier a lot. Josh Rubin, joy to work with. The man doesn't have a negative bone in his body. He's so fun to be in a room with a guy for 10 hours a day and just spitball ideas back and forth. I mean, it was a difficult film to assemble in the sense that we are, in the same way that Companion has a relishing this oscillating tone and manipulating that, Hard Eyes it's a little more silly, it's a little more goofy, but these tonal oscillations are even sharper, and you have bigger peaks and valleys for the ups and the downs, and we kind of revel in the fun of all of that. But I had a blast, had a wonderful crew in that movie. Had doing a film like this with studio support as well with Sony was, you had all the resources at your disposal, and getting people into, we had this great opportunity to work in this location where we had a little micro theater. And so once a week, we're bringing 5 people in, playing the movie down for them, and making changes on the fly with these individuals, and just learning so much about the editorial process with them. So much fun. I really hope we have the opportunity to potentially do another one or get the same team back together again, because everyone was great.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what is it like editing a movie that is kind of a mashup of genres like that, horror and rom-com, which I guess can apply to both Hard Eyes and Companion.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's really challenging, but in a fun, rewarding way. But it's intuitive, certainly. It really comes down all to your actors. It comes down to your script. It comes down to your director, and treating everything for real. I think if you look at these situations earnestly and with you try and bring out and bring out the actor's best performance and relate to the characters on a fundamental level and not feel like you're making a joke out of them, I was surprised by how much you can oscillate and deviate in tone with an audience, as long as you're following the actor's lead, as long as it feels honest, I suppose. We have several more tools at our disposal to facilitate that and help all these tonal changes. I think probably on our 2 films, Hard Eyes and Companion, the use of needle drops was huge. The soundtrack, and I gotta shout out Rob Lowry. Our collaboration on these movies, I really think make these films have this unique calibration of tones and the oscillation between just a sense of buoyancy, keeping these films fun, finding the right era and the right tone of these needle drops as well. With Companion, it's mostly 1960s love songs. Mm-hmm. And then with Hard Eyes, it's quite eclectic, but going back to a lot of some big, more recognizable pop songs, but also a lot of surprising finds as well. We're utilizing Italian and French needle drops, but up against Outkast and Supremes.
Yeah. What I would say that what makes Hard Eyes work so well is, as a movie, it understands what is so ridiculous about both rom-coms and slashers, and it completely leans into it. And that's why it is such a fun movie. We're big fans of Hard Eyes.
Yeah, when I was at the Beyond Fest screening, Josh Rubin even said it's Sleepless meets Seattle meets Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives.
It really is.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Jason Lives was, that was, if Josh could have framed that and put it up on the wall above the editing desk, I'm sure he would. That was always kind of the North Star for the entire project.
Wow.
He was wearing his influences very clearly on his sleeve. And just the man loves the genre. He was so excited to kind of play in this sandbox. I remember one particular day we came in after a test screening, and this is when we're still trying to kind of find the voice of the film. And we were trying to find a way to really balance some more of your slasher moments in some of these set pieces, particularly in the end of the movie and end of the second act. with a lot more of your more traditional kind of romantic comedy elements. And we were having a discussion about, what to keep versus what to omit if we needed to omit anything. And he went home, came in the next day, and he just was like, buoyancy. This is a film that is meant to be fun. I want it to be entertaining. This is not a film that I want. This is not a film that's meant to make you feel bad, even if the kills are gruesome. I want them to put a smile on your face. Still, this is meant to be a popcorn slasher, romantic comedy at its heart, and that became, like I said, the mantra for like the entire process.
Yeah. And I always love it because sometimes, people will do it's something meets something, and it always warms my heart that if someone does that, it's a specific, it's not just like, oh, it's Sleepless Seattle meets Friday the 13th. No, it's Friday the 13th part 6. Like, it's specific. And it's like, you really do know your homework if you can say it's this one specifically because of the difference between all the sequels.
I mean, it makes sense. 6 is definitely the most operatic of all the sequels.
It really is.
Yeah, it's the most like lightning crashing in a window with a big music scene of all the Friday the 13th films.
Yeah, that's where it turns into like Greek mythology almost. With it. It's amazing. And what I recently I went and saw The Monkey this weekend, and Oz Perkins was there and talking about working with actors and how some actors will give you totally different tones with each take. And he was talking about Tatiana, who plays the mother in the movie, and he was saying that they would get like 17 different, styles with each take. And I can only assume that when you're working with someone like Josh Rubin, that there's a lot of improv, or Drew Hancock. They both come from comedy worlds, and so I imagine that there's a lot of playing with that and a lot of improv happening. What's it like trying to like find that right one, because you can only use so many takes for a scene, otherwise you're just playing like all 17 and losing people. So what's it like trying to find that exact tone throughout it?
You got to use your emotional barometer, I suppose. It's a bit of a dilemma when you're watching dailies, and it's the first time you're ever going to see footage come in, and you don't have an opinion about it yet. I like to remind myself before I sit down for dailies, like, why are we here? What is the scene about? What is whose point of view are we in? What is the objective? What is the character or obstacle that they're working up against? So having like kind of a framing device for all that. But on the flip side, I want to be so open to improv. I want to be so open for the gems, the things that happen when you get 5, 4, 6 actors together and just magic happens, for lack of a better word. The fun surprises you get. We had a lot of that on both, particularly with Companion. I mean, Harvey, he cannot not improvise. Like, I think almost every other line from Harvey would be like a new variation of a line previously. And so you're constantly on your toes for this. But you're also trying to remind yourself, okay, why are we here? What's the emotional point of view? But, with someone like him or Rupert, some of these phenomenal comedic actors, you are trying to be very cognizant of when could a moment like this be really great for comedic relief, but when do we also need to play it more straight? When do we feel like making a joke right now may not be fully appropriate? And like I said, going back to your emotional barometer, just feeling the moments. And that's not like a one take guess thing and we're done. I mean, Josh can tell you, like, we are constantly revising this thing. I remember we did a press thing together, Josh, and you were like, editing is just re-editing.
That's all it is.
Like, it's just
editing is re-editing.
It's just
the least fun part of the whole process is the assembly, because you're working in a vacuum. You're taking things and just putting it together, and that's like basically you have like the sort of like micro universe of the scene. What is the scene doing? How is the scene written? And so you put together a scene and you think, well, that's great, that's awesome, I think that works well. You drop that into a larger timeline, and all of a sudden all the scenes start to come in and you start piecing them together, and you're like, oh man, I was way off. I was just way off. Like this was not the way that this should be leaning. She should not be in this mood now, or he's a little too red hot. I got to tone that down. Or like, where is that line from Harvey? I need a joke here. I need, you really got to just sort of like test it out as you go. And also another fun thing that's really great about Brett and I's job is that, if you're on a set, you've got about 50, 60, in larger movies, hundreds of people that are waiting on you to make your decision as a department head, or even just as any crew person, all the way down to PAs. Everything is like, we need to get this done. Here's our schedule. Here's how it goes. Whereas editorial is like, hey, let's make mistakes for a week. Let's just try some things. Let's see if this works. Let's see if that works. Both Brett and I have great stories about unbelievably stupid needle drops. But when we tried them out and everybody gave them their fair day in court, because the edit room is so much different than being on set, and obviously you want to be completely aware of time and schedule, and of course we always are, but it's a little bit more like playtime in the edit room, where you get to really, really try things and do things really differently and really weird, and because of that, it's the famous thing is we can, you can be wrong for months as long as you're right for one afternoon. That's all anybody's ever going to remember.
I think one of the more common things I said to Drew was, "You might hate this. However, what if?"
the thing I love about Drew too is that Drew would always say, "Oh man, I hate that," but all right, give it a shot. Maybe I'm wrong. But he was very, very open to trying all of the silly stuff, the good stuff, dropping lines, dropping scenes. There was, and also having two editors on a movie. He was so anxious to see just what I thought of sequences that Brett had already done that were working great, because obviously Brett's an incredible editor. So you're looking at a sequence, you're like, well, that totally works. And he's like, yeah, but if you just looked at it, just, judging from being in the room with you, you have a different sensibility, you have a different sense of humor, your tastes are a bit different. Just have a look at it. And suddenly I would find one or two lines that were a little bit different. And sometimes it was cool, we'll go with, Josh's version of that scene, but we love this thing that Brett did, so let's bring that over. Or sometimes it was no, I still think Brett's scene is really, really good, but let's grab that read for that line, and it was just experimentation like that was also very fluid. And I think it's mostly because Brett and I do have different tastes. We certainly have different skill sets. But I think the most important thing is that in my opinion, we're both very good editors. So it was that sort of that was the only thing we were worried about, was we want to have a good film. We want to have, a great cut, and ego out the door, best idea wins. And it was because of that experimentation, I think we stumbled upon a really, really interesting cut and companion.
And that's also Drew. I mean, he's always the North Star. I mean, he's always, you are there for the director. You're there to be their right-hand person. And you're doing this in service for them to find the movie together. And Drew always had that. Well, not always, actually. The movie quite significantly changed in tone from the point that we started shooting to the point that we came back from the strikes. I'll wrap up this other thought though, and loop back to that, because I mean, like Josh Rubin, Drew Hancock is an incredible director to work for. He has a strong vision, but like Josh said, he's openly collaborative and he loves to play. When we first, back to that tone thing, when we first started shooting, the film was not very silly at all. I remember the first conversation I had with Drew, he was like, and the script was very funny, but I remember reading the script and asking him, on a sliding scale of silliness, where do you see this movie from a 0 to a 10? And he was like, I view this as a negative 100 on the silly chart. I want to make a thriller with the occasional comedic element, but I want it to be, quite a little cold and but with elements that, hint towards some flamboyance and some buoyancy. And then once we get on to set, that I think you get Harvey and you get Rupert and you get Jack and all these great, and Sophie and all these phenomenal, Lucas, all these phenomenal actors. I was having to eschew, I think, a lot of this improv at first because it just wasn't consistent, I think, with the movie that Drew wanted to make. And so that early cut, we have not even a full cut, we have half of a cut of a movie that was, it took itself very seriously. It was like a Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross had all this very intense electronic score throughout. Jokes for sure, but, not a whole lot. It wasn't until we got shut down for the strikes that Drew, I think, went away, showed this first 45 minutes of the movie to a fair amount of folks. And on that phone call I mentioned when he invited me back, the other thing he mentioned was like, oh, hey, I've been showing this cut to a lot of people. I really want to open this thing up. I want it to feel pink. I want it to feel fun. I want to relish in like 1960s love songs. I want this thing to soar. And so that allowed us to like go back into the editing room and like reevaluate a lot of the performance that we had picked, and we reinstated a lot of these comedic beats, things that I think were like we've kind of been holding back, in that initial edit. And the film just like it made the job so much more fun, and the film really flourished, I think, once we began to reevaluate it on those terms.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And also wanted to ask what it was like editing, because there's several sort of dream sequences, imagined spots, kind of cutaway segments, and how you worked on those.
Ooh, good question. Josh, what do you think? I'm trying to draw on a blank right here. We have the opening of the supermarket. Oh, the reprogramming. That stuff's really fun too.
Yeah, it was
and the Halloween party ones.
Yeah, and there's the imaginings.
The meet cutes were. I remember one of the things those were all really well put together by the time that I was on. Like, for instance, that opening supermarket scene, I think I did like a little bit of music editing, but otherwise the cut pretty much stayed exactly the same from the moment I was on it till the end. But we did play around a little bit with the meet cutes for Harvey and Lucas's characters, where we were like, how late can we get in? We don't want to do the whole pan down again. We don't like, do we go right for the joke? Do we go right to the dance? Like, just sort of like tempering that and then screening it for an audience, and then gauging that response and going back to the editing room, like, okay, cool, we could try a little bit tighter. There was still a couple people that were ahead of us, and figuring that out. And one of the funnier jokes in the movie is the first time it flashes back to when he gets Iris and the Goo Goo Dolls is just blasting. And it's like sort of like, don't want the world to see me, as it cuts to him and like, the knock on the door and they're delivering Iris for him. But that sequence, that was one that we actually looked at because it was a huge exposition dump that you have to have all of the information about, the companions. But we wanted to make it like punchy and as fast as possible, and also lean on Jack Quaid's performance to make it as funny as possible. But I don't think there was anything like any sort of different approaches to it, stylistically, but rather just like, I think most of what we went for was like tight, compactive, like all of this is necessary information, but let's try to make it funny and fit in this, this tone that we've created for the movie.
Yeah. I remember at one point when we were first making those flashbacks, there was like the film nerd in me was like trying to make them exactly identical between the Lucas meet cute and the Josh meet cute, where I was like exactly the same frame count, exactly the same shots, and that lasted all of like 5 minutes before it was like, this is not going to work at all. It's just different rhythms entirely.
Yeah, different actors,
The audience had already seen it the first time, so it makes more sense for it to be abbreviated the second. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And like Josh was saying, like you're trying to evaluate where the audience is, and also like trying to stay ahead of them a little bit. And so if they can tell, you're like, oh, we're going to do the entire pan shot again, and then the stepping on the tail, like there's a sense of kind of begins to feel a little lethargic, and they're like, oh, we got to settle in for all of this again. This is going to be like another 45 seconds. And Josh is exactly right. You just, once they sense like, okay, where we are, this is the joke, we got to fly through this to get them back to the A plot, get them back to the bulk of the movie.
Yeah. The dream is to have your audience right with the movie, not necessarily behind it and certainly not ahead of it, but like right with it for like maximum enjoyment. That's sort of like Spielberg zone of everything is sort of calculated and working well. Cause like for a popcorn film, that's really what you're aiming for is that level. And obviously sometimes that can be very, very hard to achieve, but I think we were lucky to have it on this one through great actors and great writing and, obviously a great director and also just that openness in the cutting room.
Absolutely. And what a great joke. It's so layered with the whole her name's Iris. They're playing the song Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls.
There's a friend of mine who loves the Goo Goo Dolls and frequently tries to remind me that their first record was on Metal Blade. And it's just like, they're so hard rock. And so when the joke was in there and he finally went to go see the movie, he's like, I think it's really cool that he has really good taste in music. And I said, actually, the joke of it wasn't just like everyone will say like, oh, oh, her name is Iris. The name of the song is Iris. And they think that that's the thing. But really what Drew and I thought, and I think is true so much about it, is just like Josh is just like a really lame white guy. And so, yes, he's just sitting in his room and he's just listening to like the Goo Goo Dolls, and like that's kind of the joke about it. So I think it works really well across the board.
Drew loves those. I think it was written for City of Angels, which his mom was in. I think that's one of his favorite Easter eggs of the entire process. Meg Ryan.
Oh, trust me, that movie was very popular in my house as a kid. My mom loved it. Josh, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you some questions about Orphan First Kill. Because even when that was first announced, it's like, how are you going to do a prequel when the actress Isabel Fuhrman, I mean, this is 10 years later. She's an adult. She's going to play a younger version of the kids. Yes. Of Esther. What were some of the editing challenges with that film?
Well, editorially, I mean, we had done a lot of that in camera, and which obviously then fell on me editorially. You know, we had like a lot of Texas switches where it would go from a double, and then it would sort of show what she was looking at, and then it would come back, and it would be like a squatting Isabel Fuhrman. But she was incredibly game on set, and I think she really loves the character Isabel, as well she should. I mean, I think it's a pretty like well-loved character in horror circles, and she was like so keen to come back and you know, revisit that world and to bring Esther back, and she really like truly mentally and physically bent over backwards to make that movie happen. And I remember reading and thinking in my head, like, of course they're going to recast her, like for exactly what you said, like, of course they're going to recast her. And also, how do you sequelize a movie where in the opening of the first one, you know, the main villain like drowns in an icy lake. So I was like, oh, of course it has to be a prequel. But I remember just falling in love with the script because it was basically like a soap opera. It was just these two women going at each other. It was like a Bravo, you know, reality series just under the guise of a horror film in like in the Orphan world. So it was incredibly challenging trying to make all that work, and also having scenes with her and her dad, because obviously the entire point of Esther is that she falls in love with older men, and like trying to balance that and make sure that we had a proper reaction from Julia Stiles whenever we needed one. It was a big challenge, but I'm actually really happy with how it came out. I think what was most exciting was that when it came out, people liked it for the same reasons that I had liked the script, which is like, oh, this is just two trashy women going at each other. This is so much fun. This is, you know, almost like watching that, like that TV show Feud. It's like, oh, this is so much fun. These ladies are just going at each other.
Don't get Correia started on hagsploitation.
I was about to say, that's why the Orphan films work so well, is because it is hagsploitation, but it's a child, but it's not a child.
Yeah. Do you know that they announced the third one?
I think I remember it, but it wasn't off the top of my head. I will be there.
I have read it. I can't share anything, but it continues all of the storied intrigue of the series. And I think if you liked, especially if you liked the second one, you would like what they're cooking up for part 3.
Can't wait.
Well, speaking of what you can't share, we need to wrap this up. But what do you guys got coming up that you can talk about? You got anything in the cooker that you can let us know?
I got 2 things. I have a supernatural drama called Rabbit Trap with Dev Patel that is coming out at some point, I think later this year.
Great film.
It's coming off of Sundance. And in August, I have Toxic Avenger finally rearing its head, ready to burst into theaters and burn them down.
Yeah, I was at the Beyond Fest screening. That movie rules. I'm so glad it's actually going to get a release.
Yeah, it's me too. It's crazy that they made a $20 million trauma film, and maybe that's why it took so long to release. But I'm glad it's finally coming out to find its audience, because that movie is a blast.
That is exactly why it took so long.
I can't wait, because back in college, I worked on a trauma project briefly, and Lloyd was talking about selling those rights back then. And so it's been like over 10-year process of like getting this thing made. In the fact,
man,
it hit that.
I can't wait to like read the book about the pre-production on this film, because it's gone through, I think, so many different actors attached and directors. Like I was like brought in a little bit on the story of like the behind the scenes, like up until Macon was attached, but they found the perfect guy in Macon. Like he gets the lore so much. He's a Trauma's #1 fan. He hit it off with Lloyd, and he finds a way to really balance the lunacy, the the craziness with something that's really earnest and heartfelt.
The sentimentality.
It's a father stepson story at its heart, and it finds a way to be earnest and sweet without being like overtly sentimental, but still being a goddamn trauma movie at its heart. It's still a film where Toxie punches into someone, grabs their intestines, rips it out through your butt, and says, "Give me your lunch."
What about you, Josh? What do you got coming up?
I have probably around the springtime, Joe Begas and I started a film literally. It's almost 5 years ago now. But during the pandemic, we started like an apartment film over at his place, starring him and our good friend Matt Mercer. And it premiered at Beyond Fest last year. Yes. And there was still like a couple of music cues we were waiting for, a couple of visual effects that we were waiting for. But we were like, we've had this for so long, we just want to put it in front of an audience, which was great. And thankfully, people really responded to it and really enjoyed it. But that is now just about finished. And there's going to be a bit of a launch and a figuring out of distro and things like that. I think Joe's dream is to take that one, like make a 35 millimeter print and just like tour the country with it, like drinking with a new audience every night. But yeah, that'll be exciting for that to be out. And in whatever capacity it sort of exists, that'll be cool. And then Brett and I are both, I'm sure we're both reading things and getting ready for what's next, and excited to embark on some new success after both of us on Companion and Brett having Hard Eyes, which is an incredible 1-2 punch in theaters.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, sir.
Where can people? Do you guys both have socials or a website? Where can people find out what's coming next? You say you're reading a lot. Where can people find out the next projects? I'm just on Instagram. So if I'm posting any news there, I'm just on Instagram at Brett W. Bachman.
Yeah, mostly on Instagram under my name, Josh Ethier. I think I'm also on Blue Sky, but who knows if that'll take off. I would say.
Oh, yeah. I am on Blue Sky.
Yeah, it's doing pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be doing better than X is doing. I mean, boy, that's its own thing. But I think we're both pretty easy to find. And also it's funny, as I'm sure Brett and I both, we get messages from young filmmakers all the time that have seen us on this sort of publicity journey. So if anyone is listening and you love editing horror films, feel free to drop us a line too. We're both very happy to do anything we can to help younger folks figure out how to do what we do for a living.
Yeah. Right on. Love it. And also, I encourage anyone listening to look up either of these guys' IMDb's. There is bound to be a movie you love in one or both of their resumes. These guys both have incredible bodies of work. So check it out. And thank you very much for being here. Like I said, we love Companion and hope we didn't spoil too much for people who haven't seen it, because go in blind. It's amazing. Our theme song is by Restless Spirit, so go give them a listen. And our artwork is by Chris Fisher, so go give him a like. You can find us on all the socials except for X under Eye on Horror, so check that out. And also iHorror.com is the website we call home. And everybody see Companion and Hard Eyes and everything else on Brett Bachman and Josh Ethier's resumes. And we will see you guys in a couple of weeks. So for me, James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
I'm Jonathan Correia.
I'm Josh Ethier.
I'm Brett W. Bachman.
Keep your eye on horror.